Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and you know what time it is. It is 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning, hanging out here with my partner, Mark Hunter, and it is our favorite time of the week. It is time for Sales Logic. Mark, how's life going?
Life is great. Saturday mornings I wake up without an alarm because, hey, I'm pumped to do the show. This morning, we're going to be talking about how to craft a great sales conversation. Yeah, we got a good book, a book that I think everybody's read, but you know what? You need to go back and read it again, and a terrific lightning round. Good show coming up.
Let's rock and roll. All right, welcome back to Sales Logic, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to, sell more effectively. Now, before Mark tells you what we got on tap for today or gives you a little bit more detail, I always like to tell you how the show works. We always start off with a question from you, the audience. So we really want you to be a part of the show. It's probably the best part of the show. So what's on your mind? Send us a question. Go to saleslogicpodcast.com. Reach out to Mark, me. We discuss a book. We do a lightning round because we want you to leave with return on investment. So Mark, what is up for today?
Well, like I said, the topic is crafting a great sales conversation. And it was prompted by one of the questions we get. So please send your questions in to us. The question today comes from Rhonda in Kauai, Hawaii. She says, love the show. Thank you. You're on a little bit too early for me, but listen to it on Spotify. Hey, that's the best way to do it. Just grab it from your podcast app. She says, I'm struggling. I can get in the door, get to the decision maker, but my conversations are falling flat. I'm new to sales, moved over from packaging design and distribution. My company provided some sales training, but honestly do not think it was very good. Can you talk about sales conversations and what makes a good one?
Yeah. So did we pop this one into the brain or not?
Yes, we did. And hey, the brain came back with quite a few things, and I'm just going to highlight just a few. It says, hey, first of all, view it as just a conversation. Don't overcomplicate the process. A sales conversation's a dialogue. You're looking to learn from the other person. Another idea, start with a question. Engage the decision maker by asking a question relevant to them. This helps to initiate the conversation. And another one that I love, simplify the process. Don't overcomplicate it by setting up grandiose expectations. It's just a conversation. Anyway, host of other things in the brain, but let's dive into it. I'd love to hear some thoughts from you.
Yeah. So, I've been thinking a lot about this because I knew it was the topic for this week. And I've really been mindful of the sales conversations that I have had this week and what's gone well and what hasn't gone well. And I think that, I love this idea of simplifying because I think you can over prepare for a sales conversation. However, I am going to start with preparation. Like yesterday afternoon at 4:00, I had a sales conversation with a brand new opportunity. I've never worked with them before. So I needed to go into their website. I needed to go into their annual report. I needed to go into their, to their blogs and their latest press releases and find out as much as I could about the company so that I could craft intelligent questions. So I think to begin a good sales conversation, you have to know the information that's readily available to craft good questions to figure out what it is they want and what it is that they need.
I love what you said there because it's so key. Got to do that research ahead of time. There's a line that I love to use. The best sales presentation ever made is the sales presentation never given. Now, that's not an excuse not to prepare. That is an excuse to prepare. In fact, you over prepare just like you did. But you know your content, you know your material, you know the background of the customer so well that you can just have a conversation. Yesterday, I had a similar call. I had a call yesterday afternoon with a VP of sales. New client. I'd had like 3 calls with them up to that point. And you know what's interesting is he started off the conversation, great talking to him, Mark. And every time we talk, it's a great call. And this was my 4th call with him in the course of about 2 weeks. Now, what is he saying? This has been a very comfortable process because, again, it's just having a conversation. I'm going to tell Rhonda, Don't set your expectations too high. Your objective on this initial call, learn something about the customer, learn something, and look to move the call forward to the next step. In other words, you just want to keep the process moving because you're creating a relationship with them.
Yeah, the other thing, Rhonda, is I would like to know from you where you feel like you're losing them in the conversation. And what I mean by that is, back in the day when I used to do, when I got sales training from the companies that I worked for, you had like the 7 steps of how to put together a great sales conversation. And one of those steps was building rapport. And I've got to tell you that when somebody calls on me, building rapport irritates the fire out of me. I mean, it really bothers me. I don't want to tell you where I played golf that weekend. I don't want to tell you what is going on in my personal. I don't want to tell you those things. I want to talk to the business at hand. So, you have to really understand that you have to take the clues from the person in front of you and walk through a process like you need to pay attention to where you're engaging them and where you're losing them.
I love what you said, 7 steps, because I think back, one of the early training 7 steps and build rapport. And it's so stupid because it's about asking them, it's building rapport, but on their terms with their business, with what's happening in their world. And you're right, it's asking them a question about their business that's relevant. It's sharing something. It's demonstrating to them that you've done your homework, you know a little bit about them, but you're keenly engaged and interested in learning more about them. I love what Larry Long Jr. is saying. You've created such great trust and you're able to keep the conversation going. Exactly. That's what you're doing. You're keeping the conversation. Every time you have a second, third call, and this is where I see so many salespeople falling down. They get that initial call. And I think, Rhonda, this is your situation. You get that first sales call, but you can't take it to the next call. Second, because again, you haven't found out the information that you need, and there's no there's no need that they see, are you going to bring me something of interest? This is why it's so key. Ask a couple engaging questions, get them to share about their needs, and what you want to do is build on that to set up your next call.
Yeah, I mean, I love what Larry's saying here about you've created such great trust. And then Thomas pipes in and says, building trust is hard to do in the first meeting unless you have a history with that person. So true. This is, and you guys set me up beautifully because this is exactly where I was going to go, especially in the initial sales conversation, but in every sales conversation, the most important thing you do is listen. And the reason the most important thing you do is listen is because listening is how we create trust. Everybody is in that room trying to sell somebody something. The next person that's coming in after you is trying to sell them. So yesterday when I was on this call, we started off and I had 4 decision makers on the call. And they wanted me to start to tell them about my programs and about my business. And I just said, if you wouldn't mind, I said, I'm completely prepared to do that. I'm happy to. But I would really like to understand from your perspective what you went, where you're going. Tell me, and that was 30 minutes of a 45-minute conversation. Then when it got to me, I was able to say, here's everything I heard from you. And based on that, this would be the direction that I would suggest we can go.
I love that because what you did is so critical. Just because the customer asks for something doesn't mean you deliver it to them. And that's what you did. They said, tell me about, and you said, no, I'd like to really understand. That is so key. Salespeople listening to this, watching this, please don't respond to the customers. Oh, well, let me share with you what we do. No, ask them questions. Get them to go first. Let them lead so you know exactly what path to go down, what questions ask. And like you had a 45-minute meeting. They spent 30 minutes sharing with you there. Wow. I bet you felt really equipped when it came time for you to begin to, chime in, add some commentary. Love it.
Absolutely. And the bigger point that I want you to understand is the moment that you listen to me, it's a different emotional connection. Like if I just come on and you have all had it happen where salespeople talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, And you just think they don't even know what's going on with us. I mean, they don't have a clue. So even if you know, even if you've done the research, getting them to talk first, there is, let's face it. I mean, listening ranks right up there with money as one of the number one reasons marriages fall apart. So it's got to be a pretty important skill. So Rhonda, I would wonder if there's a piece of the sales conversation where you're just not picking up the clues. You're not listening. And if people don't feel heard, back to Thomas's and Larry's point, they will never trust you.
Yeah. Hey, I love Dave Sanderson's comment, member of the mastermind group. You have to remember it's a buying process, not a selling process. I'm going to put a little spin on that because it cuts both ways. What's interesting is you're interviewing the customer just as they're interviewing you. And this is why it's so keen. Rhonda, I'm going to share with you this. My whole objective in any conversation I have, and I don't care if this is you've never talked to me before, or we've talked multiple times. I'm going to ask you a question. Whatever it is that you share with me, I'm going to pick up and build on it. I'm going to pick up and build on it by sharing with you, asking you another question about it. Why? Because I want to get you leading the conversation, and I want to get you sharing with me. And when I do that, the other person feels I'm absolutely engaged in their business.
Yeah, I love what John says here. Perplexity AI could save sales research time, but not a silver bullet. John, you're so right. I pump everything into AI before I got on the call. I put the business, I put the industry. I'm curious as to what it says, but I definitely put my own thought in there. Natalie pipes in and says, listening and be curious. Always ask the client to be first. And I wanted to mention that because they asked me to go first, but I pushed back. It's not the position I want to be in. Exactly to John Wong's thing, because Bill King, I wanted to put him up here, is because resisting show up and throw up is hard for salespeople. It is so hard for salespeople, but it is not effective at all.
This comes back to this whole thing that we show up and throw up because it's the idea that I want to get to the close real quick. I want to be able to try to close this. And no, slow it down. Slow it down. You've got to go very slow first in order to go fast at the end. We go slow at first because we're engaging the customer. We're creating that level of trust. We're creating that relationship. We're creating that space that they can communicate with us. Absolutely so key.
Yeah, I love what John said here. Really, that's exactly what I did in my call. I said, I heard you say, if these were the outcomes, would you be happy? Did I get that right? And then elaborate a bit more. Exactly, John, you and I are on the exact same page. That's exactly what we did. And I love what Natalie popped in here and said, watch body language in the conversation, online or in person, because people communicate and they talk to us with so much more than the words that come out of their mouth. But Mark, I want to go back here to Bill's comment a minute. The show up and throw up is hard in sales for salespeople. Rhonda, if I had to take a guess where you were getting derailed, I would honestly say you're probably talking too much and you are not listening enough. Because while we go into a sales call prepared, if I'm going to do what Bill is talking about here, that most salespeople do, I've already crafted the conversation in my head and it's done. I'm just going to go in there and basically spit a script versus I'm going to go in on the sales call. I know where I want. I've done my research. I know how I'm going to open. I've got some thoughts about where the conversation is going to go. But my client yesterday went a completely different direction. I did not think that at all is what they were looking for. And I need to be open to that.
That is so key. And what's interesting is Bill, I truly believe that. I think the reason a lot of people show up and throw up, and Bill, great to have you part of the mastermind. Natalie's part of the mastermind. Got a lot of the mastermind members joining in with us this morning. I think people show up and throw up because they're not confident. And I'm going to go back to Rhonda's, she said she got some sales training. I bet that sales training you got was product training. And what happens is because we're not confident, we think we have to lead. We're afraid to ask questions. Hey, here's what I tell salespeople. If you would spend as much time or more developing the questions you want to ask versus the presentation you want to give, I tell you what, your sales results would be a lot better. It's listening to the customer. Play off of what they say, because at the end of the day, what is happening? You need to satisfy the needs of the customer. It's not that the customer is satisfying your needs. No. You're satisfying the needs of the customer. And that's absolutely key. But you got to listen. And what I look for, and this is what helps, I think, people go from call 1 to call 2 to call 3, is I always take call 2. I'm going to start off, hey, last time we talked, you mentioned this. And I play back to them that exact quote. And I ask them a question on it. What does that do? That connects the calls. And it now has them realizing, whoa, this person actually listens to me. A novel idea for a salesperson.
I love what Thomas says here. Oh my God, we know we can help solve their pain points, so we want to help. However, we may, what we're looking at, it may be their primary pain point, but it may not be top of their list. Or there's bigger issues there, right? Thomas, this is just, it's so smart. We jump when we hear the problem rather than digging deeper. And in digging deeper is where you can find the opportunity to really help, find the opportunity to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, and find the opportunity to really offer a proposal that's truly value add. I think one of the most important things that we need to remember as salespeople is this is our customer sales call. It is not our sales call. And I think that's a really important mindset shift to have.
I love that perspective, because here's what I get concerned that salespeople go into sales calls with happy ears. They hear something that sounds good to them, and so they run with it. And then what they do is they make bad assumptions. Assumptive conclusions draws people crazy, because again, you hear something, oh, I can solve that. But here's the thing. Customers are really only going after their top 1 or 2 issues. If it's not their top 1 or 2, I'll give an example. I had I was talking with a potential client, and they're going to have this big meeting, and here's what we're going to do. And I'm like, okay, this is good. This is great. I'm going to be the main speaker. This is going to be excellent. And then they came back to me yesterday and they said, well, we got to reorganize the company first before we can have the meeting. So we're going to push the meeting back 3 or 4 months. Now, here's the thing. If I had total happy ears, I would have been dialed in just on that meeting, but I was keeping the conversation going. So my conversation's been, okay, how are we going to craft the sales reorg to make it fit better? The idea being is that you got to connect the dots and come back and help them solve their number 1 or number 2 issues. That's absolutely key. Hey, I love Natalie. Power tip, sales logic brain for post-conversation follow-up. Yeah, Natalie's part of the mastermind, so she gets access to the sales logic brain, where you just throw those questions in there and there's some pretty good insights from Mark, or I should say Meridith, who usually has better insights.
Mark, I'm curious your thoughts on how you close a sales conversation.
Yeah. Now, okay, let's frame this up. Is this a close to close the deal or close to keep it going?
Well, either one.
Okay. I love doing this. So I had this happen to me the other day, and I've since used it a couple of times. I'm having a conversation, great call, and the customer's extending the pain. They're like talking about the pain. So then I made the comment, I said, how should we solve this issue? Now, I love that word, because now it's she, and she's a sales leader of this company. And how should we solve this? And she said, Mark, I need to get a really solid plan from you. And what does that do? She was inviting me to now give her a plan. So what did I do? I immediately said, okay, now before we do that, let's frame this up as exactly what you're looking for. So I went through a series of questions, and I kept that call going for another 15 or 20 minutes while she was framing up, because she's excited. She wants my plan. And then, of course, we ended by saying, hey, let's get that date on the calendar. What's your calendar look like a couple days from now? And we do it. You've got to have a very clear CTA, very clear call to action, and a very clear, okay, when are we going to meet? If you don't cross that criteria, if you don't check those boxes, you know what? You're going to have so many sales calls that just languish and go nowhere.
Yeah, I think that, go ahead.
How do you keep it going?
Well, I think the most important part of closing any sales call is that you take control of the sales call. I mean, that's the most important. Never, ever, ever let never ever let them control when they will get in touch with you. And that's another one of those, just like they wanted me to start and I had to push back on it. and say, no, you begin. I'd love to hear your perspective first. If people say, well, we'll get in touch with you, I'll say, you know what, you're busy. You've got a lot on your plate. Please don't worry about it. I'll follow up with you.
That is so key. I love to say, hey, you know what? You're busy. I'm busy. And you know what? I love working with busy people. Let's grab that time right now. What's the count? And I get that specific time. But I always love to say, hey, you're busy. I'm busy. And isn't it great that we're working with busy people? There's just something that people say, wow, I'm working with people who are like me. I don't know. It's just one of those funny comments. Hey, I love John's comment. Sales needs to resist fixing the problem and instead see if there's an opportunity to address what caused the problem. I love that. You're going upstream. And what does that allow you to do? It allows you to see if there's a bigger solution there for you. I love that.
Yeah, that's just huge. So Mark, what's on tap for the book today?
Well, the book today, hey, I tell you what, people, if you have not read this, where have you been? Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, it is. I make every coaching client that ever starts with me, I insist that they read How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a powerful book written in the 1930s, probably more relevant today than it has ever been.
It's funny. You do that with your coaching clients. I do that too, but I also add in Atomic Habits by James Clear.
It's a good one.
But yeah, I tell you what, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It is as relevant. We talk about how sales has changed, but it really hasn't changed.
Yeah.
It's still people. Bill King, need to reread that one. You're right. I think we all need to read that book every year, minimally. Hey,
what's our lightning round?
Ready? Top 10 ways to get better at sales. Go.
Number one, you need to tune into Sales Logic every single week.
Well, that was a layup, man. Wow. Number two, you got to make sure who you're hanging out with. Hang out with only successful salespeople, because you become the sum of the 5 people you associate with, to quote Jim Rohn.
Yeah. Commit to learn at least 30 minutes every single day, whether you read a blog, you read part of a book. And I have a shortened time of just 30 minutes because it's you'll do that consistently.
3, every day, make it your objective, and this builds on what you just said, to learn something new. And then ask yourself, how am I going to apply it tomorrow? Always look to be doing something different each day, building off what you learned the day before.
Yeah. Number 5, I would say that you need to reflect, be as interested in your failures as you are as your successes. There's a lot to be learned from where things derailed.
Number 6, take the time to listen and be proactive in measuring your listening time. Hey, if you're doing all the talking, you can't learn anything unless you're listening.
Yeah. Number 7, find somebody who's better at sales than you are and spend some time learning and listening with them. Get their advice. If you have somebody in your company, it always amazes me that the person who wins the Star Award for the year, people aren't running up to them asking them, how did you do it? What did you do? But be open and learn from people who are more successful in the industry than you are.
Number 8, create a habit. Be absolutely disciplined in how you use your time. Meridith and I are both incredibly disciplined with how we start our day, how we go through the day. Discipline rules the day. Top performers are always focused on using their time wisely.
Yeah, I just listened to a great blog about the fact that discipline can be taught. So if
yes,
you find somebody,
don't say, oh, I can't. No. Yes.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Number 9, I would say work a system. It is only by understanding and doing the same behaviors day in and day out that you'll be able to learn and know what needs to be adjusted and what needs to be changed. But consistency is the path to growth and profitability for sales.
And number 10, always play on your success. It's amazing how your attitude shapes everything. Your attitude going into a sales call predetermines the results you get coming out. If you go in with an attitude of expectation, an attitude that I'm going to learn something, I'm going to come out of it with something, it is amazing at how much that will improve the results you get. Hey, this is a great show this week. Anyway,
Yeah.
Hey, with that, I want to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic this week. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Subscribe. Make sure you're downloading it on either Apple Music or Spotify or however you get your podcast. And would you leave us a review? Because again, It's how other people find out about the show because of the reviews that you've left. Hey, if we've helped you earn a single dollar, that's absolutely terrific because our objective is to help you. Hey, I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
All right. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Sales Logic. Remember, if you have questions, put them, send them to Mark, send them to me. We'll feature you right here on the show. Think about joining the Sales Logic Mastermind. We'll see you next week.